Thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Why I Love Flagler County, your local podcast spotlighting local residents and local businesses on why they like being in Flagler and what they like about Flagler. So I am super honored to have my guest Karla with me today. Karla and I met at one of the town center holiday markets that they have because they just had so many events for the holiday season, which was awesome. And she had this amazing little booth for her program for Shine for kids, helping them understand a little bit about themselves. So thank you so much, Karla, for coming on and spending a few minutes with me today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Like I said, when I stopped by your booth, me and my dad were kind of going through it, and we absolutely love what we saw. And right before we started recording, you were explaining a little bit more. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I love this. So I'm really excited for what we get to talk about today.
Yeah.
To kind of start us off, I'd love to know, how did you kind of find Flagler County? I kind of find that when we're not from Flagler, or we're not directly from this area, people have the funniest stories on how they kind of find Flagler County on the map.
Yeah. Um, so for me, it was, I had, my brother-in-law lived in Daytona and we had thought about eventually moving to Florida, but
Mhm.
with raising a family, it didn't seem like a family-oriented place.
Sure.
Um, and then one of our best friends had moved down to Palm Coast, and Palm Coast was becoming presented as the family oriented community, and they were like building all these houses and all that. And we were like, let's investigate. And investigate meant we planned a vacation to visit my brother-in-law and check out the area, but then also call a realtor to see what would happen or what their thoughts were. And it turned out they told us about 6 months to a year to sell our house. It was before the big boom.
Gotcha.
And the universe wanted us to be here because by the time we got on the plane to do our vacation, our house had already sold. The first day it was listed.
Wow.
And we came down and it turned into a house hunting vacation, which we found a house, put in the offer, they approved, signed the paperwork. So then we started looking for daycare and we flew home and had to quit our jobs and tell everybody we're moving in 30 days. And here I am. And that
Wow.
was about 18 years ago.
Wow. So you've seen probably Flagler and Palm Coast just completely transform.
Oh, completely transformed.
That's
We didn't even have Target here when we moved
Yeah.
here.
I remember one of the interviews I've had. He's like, yeah, like 20 years ago, there's no Target. I don't think was there a Starbucks? I don't even know.
Actually, I think there was.
Okay. I feel like, yeah, when you have a place, you have to have a Starbucks
Yeah,
usually. Oh, that's so cool. That's
yeah.
crazy that everything like lines up.
It just lined up perfectly. So it actually, I had gotten a job over on the phone. So by the time I got down here, I had a job. So it worked out.
Wow. Yeah, talk about everything falling into place.
Yes.
That's so cool. Well, I'd also love to spend a few minutes kind of talking about your business that is kind of new within the past, you said about 3.5 years.
Yes.
So I'd love for you to share a little bit on, what kind of inspired you to start, and then obviously tell a little bit about what it is.
Okay. So first, I'm a pediatric occupational therapist, and I've worked in the school system for over 20 years. Um, and my 18-year-old self, when somebody asked me what I wanted to do with my life, I said I wanted to help kids. And I stumbled into occupational therapy, which I worked with kids, but it is, I love what I do. But what I noticed was kids are hard on themselves. I worked with so many students that um, can't make their own decisions. Not that they can't, they tend to follow their friends' leads, or they can't find anything good about themselves. I had a boy in particular who, because I work on handwriting a lot of times too, which is not a fun thing. So I try and write about fun things and
Right.
find, if they like a certain toy or movie, we'll write about that. But one day I was like, well, let's write about something we're good at. And he couldn't come up with anything. And I'm like, well, you're good at being a student. no, I'm not. I'm like, you're a good friend. No, I'm not. I'm like, you're good at playing. No, I'm not. I'm like, all right, you're good at breathing. He's like, no, I'm not. I'm like, you're alive. You're good at breathing. So we started there. And the cool thing was a couple of months later, because we did it like probably every so often, we'd check in on that. And he goes, wait a minute, I have something today. So he eventually was able to find his own thing he was good at. Um, and so just little things like that through my career had led me to develop Shine. So it's an activity journal, and I'm calling it mindfulness because it's more just about being present and mindful of yourself. But it's not a typical journal where you answer questions every day. Like, what am I mean, it does have this, but it's not just what am I grateful for? What do I like about today? It has activities in there to also promote learning about yourself, from even fun activities of like a this and that game, or would you rather. So you're starting to make your own choices and find out, oh, wait, I like this. And it's okay that nobody else does, because you're not being compared to anybody. It's all about you. Um, so the activities in there are all things I have done with kids over the years, that worked. And I was like, hey, this really needs to be in a book or something.
Right.
And I'm just very passionate about helping kids and doing the right thing for them, and just empowering them. So that's where the journal started. That was my first one. And fortunately enough, I work in the school system. So one of the schools allowed me to trial the journal in a classroom. So I had been doing it on my own and doing some research, but they let me trial it in a classroom. And I went in kind of blind. I found a teacher who would do it. I didn't know the makeup of the class, boys, girls, learning disability, gifted. I didn't know anything. And the teacher was amazing. And I did an anonymous survey at the end where the kids answered questions. And the results were so amazing. I think there was 20 or 21 students, and 19 or 20 of them wanted to do the journal again. And only one said they didn't. So um, and it turned out, not that it matters if it's boy or girl, but there was more boys in the classroom than girls. It was like 14-7.
Wow.
And they loved it. So I was like, okay, I'm on to something here. They gave me some feedback. The teacher did as well, and administration. So I adjusted it and made a couple changes. Um, and from there, and I forgot to mention to you before, I do a lot of fundraising. So I raise money to donate the journals into the schools so I can get more research, more data. So I did that. I donated over 500 journals, and in the span over 500, but this one particular one, um, it was from second grade to sixth grade, and I received, I think, 279 anonymous surveys back, and the results were really good as well for every grade level. And from that, and again, feedback from teachers and administration, um, they wanted something a little bit more that would incorporate into their day and not have a separate book. So I
Mm,
created my newest journal, which is called the Student Planner. So it functions as an actual planner that they can write down their assignments or homework or whatever, but it also has a little daily piece of writing, drawing an emoji of how you're feeling. It does have some prompts to answer, like what are you grateful for? But then it also has some of the activities and some more activities, and it lasts the whole school year, which is
wow.
something that they wanted.
Right.
So everything's just kind of falling into place. So the activity journal is like a 30-day intense, get it all at once. Great for home and school. It can be done as a subject. We call it mindfulness as a subject. Um, and then you have your full year planner. So they can learn, so everybody learns together. It's proactive. Nobody's being singled out for having emotional issues or behaviors or anything like that. Um, and through all of this research, it's actually turning out to be a social emotional learning program, which they call SEL. in the school world, it really falls in line with those social emotional learning programs that schools are doing. So it's a nice tool to go along with that. And like I said, the beauty is it's proactive and you're learning things naturally and everybody's learning it together so that when you do, we all have emotions. You're never going to not have an emotion, but when you do, you can fall back on something you've learned. And I have one quick example. It's a 4-year-old. I mean, I've had older kids too, but I just like to express the 4-year-old. There's some breathing activities in there. And she had learned some breathing activities. And months later, I saw her in a different situation setting, and it was a challenging um, activity or setting, whatever we were doing. And she stopped me halfway through and said, "Wait a minute, I need to do my breathing. Can we do the breathing exercise?" And I was like, wow, even a 4-year-old is remembering this months later. And it's showing me just how powerful it really is. And I have a lot of little examples like that. So
Yeah.
so that's how Shine developed and where we're at now. I do also do in-person groups to facilitate some of the activities and lessons just more in person.
Yeah, that's awesome. I absolutely love that. I mean, kids are a huge passion for me as well. I absolutely love kids on every level. I've been working with them. So I used to be like a figure skater coach when I was younger, and then now I just do like I help out at church locally and stuff like that. And I absolutely love being a part of their developmental years. And there are so many ways that I'm learning on how to help kids develop these types of skills, this awareness at a younger age that'll help them, right? Not like forcing it down their throat, not doing
Right.
these things that are bad for them, but it's like, hey, just asking questions a different way, right? Or doing an activity in a different way, or having them, tell you what they want and their
Right.
emotions. And it's been so fascinating for me to learn it, especially as I get older and I reflect on how I was as a kid and how I like to be treated as a kid versus how that's impacted me now. And it's been really helpful. So I think that's awesome what you're doing, and that you've been able
You.
to have so much data relay back to you with telling you these things that people wanted. Like now they have the whole year plan or school year plan and things like
Mhm.
that. So that's really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of shared a little bit on, different examples that you had, but is there anything that you learned across on this journey that you didn't think you were going to learn, or something unexpected? You're like, oh, wow, this is a completely new field. I didn't see this coming.
Yeah, I think the whole thing has really been I'm learning something new, honestly. Um, well, even at how I ended, that it's turning out to be more of a social emotional learning program
Yeah.
versus just a journal. And I don't want to say just a journal because
Right.
journals are very important, but um, I learn from the kids every day. They all teach me something. And I don't always you expect that. We don't always expect to learn from kids, but boy,
Right.
do they teach you a lot.
Yeah.
Um, and kind of what you tapped on, like what works and what doesn't work. And sometimes they just need to hear it a different way or have it
Right.
presented differently. Um, Even little things like drawing versus writing to express their feelings or, you know,
Yeah, and it's been a huge. So at church, I help mostly with like 2 and 3-year-olds. So they're really young,
yeah,
and not all of them know the vocabulary to express themselves,
yes,
right? So it's like you said, like changing kind of the wording. It's like instead of asking them like, do you want to just play, it's like, hey, do you want to play with the puzzles, or do you want to play with the books? And then they kind of tell you, and if they don't want to play with either, now they know like what the guidelines are of what play means. So they'll be like, no, I want to do this one. I'm like, okay, this is completely different, but that's great that you're able to tell me now because you have kind of a different frame. So it's
yeah,
things like that that I've learned through just like, helping out and just listening to the kids.
yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, this is like a completely different way. And it's so helpful for them, and it's helpful for me.
And touching on that, a big part of my program is the emojis. I think you mentioned you saw I had emojis. So
Right.
in the journal, it starts off, I think there's 12, 9 or 12 emojis to choose from. And you can circle it, which is great for the younger kids because, like you said, they can't always identify how they're feeling. But if you look at an emoji, it might resonate with you like, oh, this is how I'm feeling right now. And then for the planner, I left it open where they could draw their own because it's probably for a little bit, it's not necessarily for the older population, but it does go to an older age.
Right.
So now they can, because they have an idea and they know what emojis are and can kind of pull from their memory a reference and draw their own. So yeah, so in one I'm feeding them some examples because they don't have the vocabulary, and then the next I'm allowing them to express their own. So
Yeah, I think that's great because, especially when you're so young, it's so frustrating when you don't have the vocabulary to express what we can express. Like, obviously babies can't tell you when they're hungry or when they're
right.
upset because like they just have kind of one emotional way of reacting.
Yes.
And it's just being mindful of like, all right, you can't communicate in the way that I can. So what tools can I give you so I can understand what you need to communicate? Which
Right.
I think is obviously what a big part of what your book is doing is teaching kids on different ways they can kind of express this until they can get to that stage where they can express it in the vocabulary and the ways that people can understand.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Karla, thank you so much for coming on and sharing a few minutes. I absolutely love what you do. Obviously, I'm really passionate about this. So I'm just
Yeah.
so thrilled that we were able to get this time on the calendar so I can learn a little bit more and you can share with the audience. Is there any last thing you'd kind of like to throw out there before we wrap it up? What is the best way someone can get in contact with you or find out more information?
So my website has all the information. It's shineforkids.org. Um, so that's probably the easiest way. My phone number's on there, the email's on there. It gives a little description. Um, yeah, and if anybody has any questions, I am always willing to talk to anybody. So if they want to call, text, email, I'd
Yeah.
be happy to explain a little more or answer any questions.
That sounds great. So I'll make sure I have that link in the description so people can click on
Okay.
that a little bit easier. Again, Karla, thank you so much for the time today. I had a complete and utter blast learning a little bit about what
Yeah.
you do, and it just really resonates with me what you do, and I really love it. So thank you so much
Great. Well,
again for the
thank you
time.
for having me. I appreciate what you're doing too.
Thank
So it's really
you.
awesome.
I appreciate that. Well, thank you all, and I'll see you next time.